Hi, I'm Leann Ferry, Executive Leadership and Communication Coach.
I'm Dr. Kris Leann, and I'm an organizational psychologist.
Welcome everyone, Leann and Kris here for another episode of Courageous Conversations for Leaders and Organizations. This is our Delegation Series number 2. And today we're going to talk about the loss of confidence that sometimes happens in your transition away from a subject matter job into a leadership role. We're also going to talk about how you might be able to build new sources of confidence, increase your time in communications, and also make visible the work you're doing that might seem invisible to others. Let's get started. In order to delegate, you have to let go of doing some things that gave you a lot of confidence and positive feeling in order to get others to be able to do those things that you were doing and getting the positive feeling out of. So as you start to do that, what is something that could be helpful for leaders to know, to do when they're going through that?
Right. Well, once I did some interviews it was a IT function, and there were about 45 people in that group, but there were 3 or 4 people that spoke about their manager. And what they said was really interesting. They said things like, she's really tough, but everyone gets promoted. Everyone who works for her gets promoted. She's really tough, but she gets the job done. And she's really tough, but people that she's worked with, she's good friends with for years. So they were actually describing what to me is a translation of being able to delegate to people, helping them, supporting them, setting high expectations, and pushing them sometimes a little bit into a place where you can see them going, maybe they don't see it themselves, which is part of helping to develop another person. So if you're a leader and you enjoy developing others, which, by the way, you have to be very confident in yourself, right? You're developing others. Those people could actually go up the corporate ladder faster than you, or they could do some laterals and then come back. So you have to be very confident in your own strengths and your leadership. But really, delegation is in part developing other people, potentially to be their very best, right? And so it's a role of mentoring, coaching, helping others to be working at their best strengths as well. So
that makes me think about how there's so many different things at play. Mm-hmm. When you're a leader and you're a new leader and you're trying your very best to keep this team or these employees really, healthy, happy, and highly productive. But you have your own goals and your own needs for feeling grounded and self-confident. So you're transitioning into letting go of a big chunk of yourself, of what you do, and giving it to others. Then what is the next step for you as a leader to replace that? I mean, as a coach, I can say, I feel like one thing that gets in the way is that when a leader is doing, really good job with these leadership tasks in helping others build their capabilities, it's not something that is super observable. And so then their own self-doubt and lack of confidence around that get in the way because they're not seeing me do the things I used to do.
Yeah, and they fear that is a cause for loss of some credibility, right? Is that what their concern is?
Yeah, I think so.
One of the things that could combat this concern of my folks don't see me doing what I'm doing, so therefore potentially they don't understand, they won't trust that I'm actually working on their behalf, right? So that what I think could combat that is a lot of communication. So to the work of leaders and managers is to plan and to organize and to monitor, lead, communicate, all of those big basic functions, if they're communicating frequently, might help people to go, oh, that's what they're doing, right? Oh,
And that's really where the courageous communication piece comes in too, is what we've said in past past episodes, no matter what the topic: communicate more, communicate better, communicate to connect, communicate to understand. And it
right.
may not be comfortable sometimes, but that really does help combat this, because then that is a visible thing.
Yeah.
And being able to do it without, fear of micromanaging, or, it might take some tweaking. One of my tips for leaders is to say, look, well, what can you do to remind yourself on a daily basis or weekly basis of the things you are doing in this connecting, conversations, relationship building, leading, what can you do to make it visible? And in a coaching session, I wouldn't say, well, would you do A, B, or C? Because I'm trying to get that person to come up with what would work for them in their context. So it's not what I, think that they should do. But the conversation is usually really fruitful. What if you need to yourself stay aware of all the things you're doing that might not be visible to someone else, how can you collect that information? Where can you put it so it's visible, or where you can remember it, so that you do feel more grounded and confident about what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I read a study once. It was the basic point was that as you move up in leadership and take on more and more responsibilities in a leadership role, that you spend more and more time on purely communication.
Mm-hmm.
And it's up to about 80%, a certain level of leaders. And I think it was probably closer to the C-suite, closer to the top. But think about that. That would mean that out of your 40 hours a week, if you worked 40, you're probably spending 32 or so hours communicating in some way or another. Written communication, answering questions, preparing materials, giving talks, giving open sessions, Q&A sessions, that type of thing. So the value of communication becomes greater the more leadership responsibilities you have. So that's maybe part of the lesson here in terms of how leaders are spending their time. It is absolutely legitimate to know that you will, and to plan on spending more and more time on your communication.
I'm so glad you said that, Kris. That makes so much sense. It maybe isn't something that, it's something that people know intellectually, but when it comes to actually doing it, or monitoring yourself, rating yourself, self-rating, like, how am I doing? Oh my gosh, I have to do all this communicating and I can't do this. Like, really changing that mindset and realizing and accepting that is a huge part of your job. So that would be like another tip, right? Accept that is part of your job and focus on it, get better at it. Because delegating requires a lot of communication to do it well, to have the other person be empowered so that the next time you delegate, it's much easier. They're much more independent. That's a process. It's not like do XYZ and now it's done perfectly and I don't ever have to do that communicating or that connecting work again. That's not how it works. It's so much about communication. So
this process of delegation is really about we've talked about building capability, but it's about building trust. It's about giving people credit for their good work. Mm-hmm. These are the kinds of things that make a huge difference inside of organizations in the long term. If we're talking about, we're playing the long game here.
Yes.
These are the kinds of things that really matters. And it's just another reason why delegation really is so important. The allocation of time, overall time that you're going to be spending as a leader in your new leadership role will increase. So you will be spending more time in communication. Now, if in the beginning you feel a little bit uncomfortable because you think perhaps people are wondering what you're doing and that you're not doing all the things that you used to do, you're in transition. So just keep reminding yourself that the leadership transition is important. You'll spend more time in quality conversations and courageous conversations. So sometimes when you're delegating, things can go a little bit wrong, but keep interpreting everything with a positive frame of mind about the intention of the other person, and increase the quality of the communication, even when things are a little challenging at first with delegation.
And I would like to add too, just if you, because you might be into doing work that isn't immediately visible to others, and if that bothers you, if you're the personality type that would bother and you need to see visible evidence of your effort every day, then maybe if you had a few conversations that were important that day, find a way to make it visible to you, whether that's a checklist that you use, or maybe you put something on the wall to remind you the important things that you're doing as a leader every day. Whatever would help you remind yourself that you are on the right track and that this is the work of a leader. I think we're going to talk some more about some other aspect of delegation next time. So I hope you join us.
Fantastic work today. All right. Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.